listen, we finished Shōgun.
And the Shōgun came out of the walls.
I had to watch it twice. I had missed a couple things the first time, and it was just a good final episode.
It was. There was a lot of it makes me, like I've said 1,000 times, it makes me want to rewatch the series again because I feel like there were a lot of scenes and conversations in this final episode that mirrored scenes and conversations that happened in the first couple.
Yeah, a pretty obvious and easy one was Blackthorn at his house in Edo, walking in the backyard on the stones, and the difference in reverence there. That was pretty cool, but also, yeah, an easy one to pick up. And also, I would love to rewatch it and pick out all the little things that might have been Toranaga the whole way through.
Yeah.
Talk about master of puppets. What do you call him? Is he still the hero? Is he the villain? Is he both?
I don't know. I was watching this episode and I was just thinking boy, if he was my boss, I would be so frustrated at every turn because there's nothing genuine about him. He's always testing you. He's always scheming. There's always something that he's trying to get you to do. And so the face that he's showing you is never what he's actually trying to do.
Yeah, what's interesting is I love that the reveal is between him and Yabushige. It's not him and anybody else. It's him and the other one who's been a scheming, out for himself, a bad guy while being a good guy at the same time. And so what a perfect revelation of that's the moment. And I do love the line that Yabushige says of, wait, you're just like one of us. You've got your own schemes, own plans, you're sticking out for your own skin. And I love that as a moment shared between them.
Yeah, but Toranaga entrusts it because he's about to kill Yabushige. So there's no point in keeping up the facade of being Toranaga the Great. Of course, Yabushige is tell me about what are your future plans? And Toranaga's what's the use talking about the future with the dead man?
Yeah, why tell a dead man the future? Woof.
Yeah.
I guess to start back at the beginning of the episode, if we're going to go a little more chronological, at least to give the basis of the plot, we pick up with Blackthorn right after the explosion's gone off, but in this weird dream state where he's having like the episode's title, The Dream of a Dream. He's having a dream of him as an old man in England holding Mariko-sama's rosary, and everyone's asking the little boys, so you lived among the savages, you got the sword from them, and he has a flash back into his body and goes, wait, do I want that future even with all that's happening?
I thought that was a good framing because it's hard to know what's an actual flashback and what's a dream sequence. And so I think at the beginning you're not really clear that this isn't an actual proper flash forward to the future of him as an old man, that this is him as a younger man envisioning what he wants out of his old man life, and that this is him returning back to England with all of his trappings of his adventures in Japan is one pathway that he is trying to take, and it's the conclusion to all of his own schemings. But it isn't until later in the episode that he actually lets go of that.
Yeah, and I do like when that kind of wraps up. And at least for me in the moment, it was it was jarring, honestly, to go from the calm dream to the explosion, the screaming. He's screaming as he picks up Mariko-sama, and then afterwards says a prayer and gives her soul to God and says, God our Father, whoever that might be, receive your servant, Mariko-sama. And Yabushige is the one that kind of wakes him up, yelling, Anjin, wake up, we got to get out of here. So again, confusing with all the who's who and who's trying to kill who. Why there's other moments where he's saving Anjin, even though he allowed the assassins to come in there. I don't know.
Yeah, Yabushige is a man of no, he doesn't have a spine. He just is he's going to go with whoever is asking. Have you seen that episode? Did you watch Community?
Yeah, I've watched a good chunk of it, almost all.
There's an episode where it's an episode on conspiracies and stuff, and the joke at the end is that the dean is just going along with whoever's trying to make a plan with him, and so he's just he's just going with whoever's wants to make a plan with him, and I'm oh, this is Yabushige. He's just anyone who's making him an offer, he's just like, yeah, I'll do it. Yes, I'll do it. I don't know if he ever said no. Like he was without a spine, which made him predictable to Toranaga.
Yeah, almost, because Toranaga knows exactly how that is.
Yeah.
Once again, we have Toranaga by the lake with his hawk. We see the council having quite a bit of an argument as Ishido's like, all right, this is all we needed. Let's go ahead and bury Mariko and just go straight to war. And I think, once again, Toranaga's masterful planning involved in this, but Ishido really shows his true colors at all the wrong moments. And we see Lady Yochibe just not having it. She really wants a nice Christian burial for Mariko. She wants a nice amount of time for Mariko's passing to be lauded and praised and given moments by everyone in Osaka. And Ishido's like, nope, let's just grab the weapons and go. And then we have an ever so famous Japanese earthquake, which causes everybody to shake in their boots. And you have to love it. Because even if it was all that common, the timing was impeccable.
Yeah, and then everyone's just like, maybe we should like rethink what we're gonna do. And he's like, this is no time for superstition. And it was just the earthquakes are the rider's hand of God kind of stuff, just to create more shiftingness in the plot. But I really liked when Ishido was like, no, we're just gonna go straight to war. We're not gonna bury her body or whatever. And then Lady Ochiba was just like, no, we are. And it was like, oh, okay, so she's really the one with all the power. Like, is playing at having power, but Lady Ochiba is the one with the real power.
And it was nice to see that as the episode goes on, as we find out more of the divisive and devious plans of like, okay, even though he seems to be the one pulling the strings, when push comes to shove, everyone's going to follow Lady Ochiba and the heir. They're going to obey whatever that decision is. Which we see Ishido not shaking in his boots, but he thinks he's wrapped it up really nicely. And he goes to visit Yabashige. Yabashige has pretty much lost his mind after the explosion and such, thinking there's koi pond in the water, all kinds of things. Just has like a little weird freak out moment. And Ishido's like, go home. How about you go back to Edo and just, you've done your job. Good job. Goodbye. Kind of tries to tie up his loose ends. He had to have known Yabashige would have died, but shouldn't he have been worried that he was going to spill the beans? Like, even with all that's going on?
Yeah. At that point, is it just like, it just doesn't matter anymore? Yeah. If people know that, like, Yabashige was spilling the plans? Because, like, at this point, Mariko's dead, and is that not spilling the beans enough?
They're going to war? Yeah, I guess so. It was a weird one, and at least for me, them getting back to Edo, you have a scene or two with Blackthorn and the priest, the father, who says that Mariko kind of negotiated his safe return. She made some deals in order for him to get back there safely. And just to know that the Portuguese still believe Toranaga is going to be dead in a few weeks. And of course, there's a great line from Blackthorn where he says, then you don't know Yoshi Toranaga.
Yeah.
Obviously. That's what the whole point of the show is. Nobody knows who this guy is, really, including us, the audience. I was a little sad, though, that we did miss the burial. I know there's only so much you can fit in one episode, but I was like, oh, that time jump of us completely missing the Mariko burial. Maybe there wasn't enough room in the episode, obviously.
Yeah.
We couldn't go to episode 11 or whatever else, but I do wish we had at least had a moment seeing that.
Yeah. Is the same in like that Toranaga missed his son's funeral. And
that's
you
true.
know, these characters that we love, like we just don't get to watch them be put into the ground.
I do like that the way that Toranaga finds out Lady Ochiba is on his side and is done with Ishido is she gives one of the women coming back from Osaka a secret message. Because I think it could have been easy to have like Warlord to Warlord or Blackthorn, because he's our main character as a Western audience. He gets the message. But no, I like that it goes to one of the handmaidens who then hand delivers it to Toranaga. And he quotes the most beautiful poem from Mariko, in which she says, if I could use words like scattering flowers and falling leaves, what a bonfire my poems make.
So good.
Beautiful. Beautiful. And Toranaga wraps it up by saying, what a bonfire she made.
Yeah.
She's the reason. The last couple things in the episode, like we already talked about, a shot for shot. Blackthorn back in Edo, a little more Japanese than he is English at this point. He has a chat with Fujisama, wants her to stay. She's going off to become a nun. So that has to happen.
I think one of the shots that I feel like they mirrored from one of the first couple episodes was where Blackthorn and Yabushige approached Toranaga in the forest. And I feel like the first version of this was Blackthorn was the prisoner and Yabushige was the one standing over him respectfully. Yeah. And it was the opposite this time, where Yabushige was the one on his knees and Anjin was the one standing honorably and respectfully. And it was complete reversal of roles.
Yeah, and it was good to see, to your point, the changing of the pawns. It's not like either of these people were like the main generals or whatever else. There was some esteem, and of course, Blackthorn by the middle of the episodes gets more esteem. But yeah, fun to see how, like you're saying, Toranaga plays with his pawns, and we see it mirrored in this way. And we have Yabushige asking for Blackthorn to be his second, to chop his head off. And Toranaga knows. He said, nope, not going to happen. There's too much at stake here. Got to tie this loose end up.
Yeah. This is one of the things that, like, I wish that I was a little bit closer to the culture, because Toranaga is like, so basically they come back into the harbor and then they see Blackthorn sees his ship has been burned. And is it the elusive ship that like is like central to the plot the entire time with all the weapons is now burned, and it's just like sticking barely out of the harbor. Blackthorn learns that Mariko exchanged his life for his ship so that he could remain alive as long as his boat was destroyed. And of course, we later on learned that there was Toranaga that made that deal. And Toranaga was the one who burned the boat, which is a beautiful metaphor of like the boat was always Blackthorn's symbol of returning home and returning back to Japan and becoming a knight and all this kind of stuff. And then to have his boat burned is like, no, this is your home now. This is where you belong. And we've gotten that story beat a number of times over throughout the series as Blackthorn becomes less and less like his crewman. And he's a man caught between worlds. So I thought that was pretty nicely symbolic. But the fact that Toranaga was the one who torched the boat, and then he started ransacking his own village to try and find the people who supposedly burned the boat when it was him that burned the boat. And there's literal heads that are sitting on like pikes. And it's just like, this guy is so committed to his shroud of secrecy that people will die. Innocent people will die, and he'll kill them.
Which I guess, yeah, kind of like we saw the gardener die on an earlier episode. What, episode 4 or 5?
Yeah.
This commitment to peace and secrecy at the cost of bloodshed is pretty intense. I feel like that scene where Blackthorn goes up to Toranaga on the hilltop and is pleading, like, take my life instead. Do not tear the village apart. Just let me kill myself. And Toranaga just says no. And finally, the sword is out. He's about to commit seppuku. And then Toranaga just hits him with a left jab. Like, just a nice little jab across the face.
And his body goes flying. Like, I watched it like bounce across the ground. I'm like, damn, Toranaga is ripped.
I'm like, Toranaga is literally not pulling any punches. And he just knocks him out. And he reminds him who's boss. And I think for a lot of the series, we know Toranaga and Blackthorn are not equals. Even though at moments if Toranaga kind of gives him that illusion, the buddy cop swim scene, the hey, teach us about your cannons and such, all these different moments where you're like, Blackthorn is really important. And then it's all wrapped up and you realize Toranaga tells his buddy, Blackthorn has just been a laughing piece. He's a fun comedic character to have around. He's not necessary. He's a distraction. Made evident by the plan to have him rebuild the ship and then sink it again and have him pull it back and rebuild it again.
Yeah, that was really when Toranaga said that, I was like, no, I completely get what he means, because now that we've seen the entire series, you realize that all of the twistings and turnings of the plot had nothing to do with him, had nothing to do with the Anjin.
Yeah.
Like, he was almost a red herring the entire time, of like, at some point he's going to be so crucial to the plot. At some point, all of his weapons are going to be so crucial to the plot. And at no point is that ever the case. And it's like he's literally serving as a distraction to the council, to everyone else in the land, so that people are more focused on him than they are on Toranaga.
Yeah.
Which is really great scheming on Toranaga's side.
Great scheming. And I think from a writer's perspective, and it must be this way in the book, from a writer's perspective, what a good way to subvert the audience.
Yeah.
I sat down with a bunch of friends at work the other weekend. We were still talking about what are we watching? What are you watching? Of course, I'll bring up Shōgun. The number of people who still think this is a white savior move show that is whitewashing Japan. I was like, oh, this is a show literally meant for you. It's meant to show you that the distraction was a pawn that is us as the audience, but also is a distraction. He does not have any bearing on the plot, like, other than being the distraction the entire time. And I think, especially for those who want to just point right to Last Samurai, which, having seen it many times, I do not find it to be a white savior movie, because once again, The Last Samurai is Ken Watanabe, not Tom Cruise.
Mm-hmm.
This is still even more culturally relevant and more Japanese than Last Samurai by a long shot.
Yeah.
And it's not an equal it's just not an equal 1-to-1. Blackthorn didn't give them the cannons throughout the whole season. We had like maybe 1 or 2 episodes of cannons. He's not the reason they saved anybody. He didn't have superpowers. He didn't save Mariko. He is this tragic character that in many ways is now imprisoned in Japan because there's no way he's leaving.
Yeah. And I think that's, not to, because I don't know if you listened to the extras at the end, but they talk about how Blackthorn's arc is to be a man who believes that the world owes him something, and that he has all this control and all this power. And then over the course of the series, all of that gets whittled away, and you just see him accept control, that he doesn't have control. Powerless, that's like the that he's powerless. That's the lesson that Mariko was trying to teach him with like the eightfold fence and the earthquakes, and like we live and we die. Yeah. And then you can see him at the end, especially that great scene where he's walking across the rocks and sitting really contemplatively in front of the rocks in his garden, that he is a different man than he was in the beginning. And it's probably for the better. He's like, he lets go of that dream of him in England as an old man with all of his trappings of his adventures, of like being a knight and establishing trade routes with the Japanese and all this stuff. He lets go of all of that. And I think he's just content to be a person in Japan. And I think that's, he might be a prisoner from one perspective, but from another perspective, like, he's living, he's alive. And there's beauty in that as well.
That's a good point. Less so prisoner, more so part of Japan's society.
In the beginning, you could equally say that he is a prisoner in himself, but he's a prisoner to his own ambitions. He can't see a life beyond his own ambitions and his own schemes and his own plans. And to have that stuff taken away from him so that he can just be alive and like actually look at the beauty of the rocks in the garden, and not have the rocks in the garden be a means to an end for him, is itself like he exchanged one form of freedom for another and one form of prisonerhood for another.
Yeah, and in that scene where he's talking to Toranaga on top of the hill, he quotes some of what you just quoted. He's quoted as saying, "I am the enemy. I used you," and he keeps saying it to Toranaga. Mm-hmm. And there's a moment when you realize, like, oh, maybe it's not that Toranaga doesn't understand. It's that Toranaga knows better than what Blackthorn's saying right now.
Yeah.
Who's using who? And then when he falls to his knees and he's sitting there and lets go of that last flash forward of him in England, he whispers, "Fuck it. We live and we die." And so he does say it. He has become Japanese.
Yeah.
He has become part of the culture that, fuck it, we live and we die. He's ready to embrace it. Which I think wraps up, at least for him, nicely, pulling up the boat with Buntaro and the other men from the village, pulling up the boat, and then also him on the water with Fuji, finally letting go some of these things and learning to be at peace. So he has Fuji let go of her husband and son's remains over there on the water, and then he finally lets go of the rosary from Mariko. So I think that was a pretty nice way to wrap it up before we
Yeah.
have one more badass shot of Toranaga.
Yeah. And what's so funny is that so much of at least what a Western audience might just be is like, oh, well, where's the big battle?
Yeah.
Where's the resolution? Is just left to the future. It's almost unresolved. But in Toranaga's mind, it's already done. Like
Yeah.
he's already won. And that was one of my favorite. He's up on the cliffs talking with Yabushige before he cuts his head off. And he says, like, why send in an army to do with what I could do with one woman? And I thought that was just a phenomenal line to give and goes to show both the tenacity of Toranaga and Mariko, that they have the patience to do one move, to wait until you do one move that you essentially win in a bloodless battle.
And just, again, so much more brain than blood. And I think that is one reason why villain, anti-hero, whatever we're going to call him, or just heroic mastermind pulling the strings, he is a mastermind. Crimson Sky is already done and not a single bowstring. Nothing had to happen. There was no storming Osaka. Like you said, he sent a woman to do what an army never could. He convinced the only person that really mattered, Lord of Chiba, and did so by losing his vassal, losing Mariko, and a couple others along the way, of course, his son and others. But it wasn't like it was a massive battle. And I think that's the beautiful part where Yabushige kind of points it out. You are the Shogun. You did it. You got exactly what you wanted. And you have Toranaga kind of pointing out what Blackthorn said earlier. You'll never win. And he's like, I will if I win. I will if I'm successful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. What a good show.
What a good show.
What a good show. I need to watch it all again. I really should.
Yeah, for all those who haven't been watching or who have been worried or who just don't like the week to week release because we live in a world of immediate satisfaction / 10-hour stories all at once. For those who want a wonderful Saturday of Japanese culture and fun and great storytelling, sit down and watch Shogun, then watch all the special features. I know I've watched the first 4 or 5 episodes worth, but I'm going to finish the rest of them because they're just so good.
They are, yeah. And cinematography, set design, costume design, like just like landscape and pacing, like every part of the show just hit so well.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where I had people at work be like, is there going to be a season 2? I don't think there's going to be a season 2, especially for the price. But I hope the show's creators, I hope other streaming services have all taken note, and they're going to be doing more of this coming soon. I think especially there's so many countries, so many stories, so many archetypes, and so many books to adapt off of, which is what this was.
Yeah.
I think it should hopefully give them a little more courage to adapt more material, show things that are not all set in the American West, even though I love that area, whatever. Put some money behind it. Put some money behind it. Do the work. Get the right people to get the story, the setting, the plot down, and do it respectfully and not so fetishy. And I think there's a lot of opportunity for more shows like this. And also just more samurai shows. If we're going to go there, I think Americans should have 10 more samurai shows.
10 more samurai shows. And then like we get some of the great mythology out of India and some of the great stories out of China. Like the Monkey King. I would love to see a great, beautiful adaptation of the Monkey King or Journey to the West.
Hopefully we'll get more of it soon.
I'll tell you what, I'm going to miss seeing the Twitter discourse over Shōgun with all the memes that were made every week. The memes were really good.
The Christian nonsense was perfect when I saw anything too wacky on Easter weekend. Good memes. And I hope for everyone involved. Mariko was the actress that played her was already in Monarch. We see her in a couple other things. I hope for those wanting to cross over and do a mix of Hollywood and Japanese film and television. There's that opportunity. And also, as one who works for a company with Japanese owners, I hope they take note and we get some of Japanese television movies over to the US. They do not license them out for nothing, which kills me. They have full TV shows, historical dramas, all these things that they just do not bring west because they don't want to. I hope this show opens the entertainment borders a little bit, and they license it out and say, oh, we can send 3 or 4 movies to Netflix that do really big numbers in Japan, and they will get an audience and people will watch them.
Yeah. Between Shogun and Godzilla -1, like we're only in like what, Q2, and like it's already been a big cinematic year for, okay, I guess Godzilla -1 came out last fall. Anyways, but it's clear that the Japanese media makes a splash here.
Yeah, plus Perfect Days is already a little, not even an awards movie, but just like an indie award-winning drama. That's from Japan. That came out December, starting, and then came into America soon afterwards. I think there has to be a little more sharing because people want these stories. People want more of this going on.
Yeah.
They don't want just all the same.
It'd be really funny for like Japanese media to go mainstream in America, where it's really just like anime and stuff has been like the love of people who are on the margins here in America, that like anime is not necessarily mainstream. And to have like something like Shogun or Godzilla -1 really make a splash in like center, like mainstream American culture is like, no, we can start expanding and this stuff is more accessible to more people than just people who love anime.
Yeah. And especially when it's less of a side culture and more of just part of the culture, I think it's going to be easier to see more stories. We keep talking about diversity, but yeah, anime working here, the numbers are going up and there is worldwide recognition of knowledge of anime, but it still is just a little too far out of reach for a lot of Western audiences that love Western storytelling, where I believe Shogun had enough of an influence / palatability that didn't make it such an Eastern story as far as just like plot and pacing and such. So there's a happy medium. There's a way to segue and share these opportunities, but I hope they're taking the right lessons and not the wrong ones.
Me too. But they probably won't be because it's Hollywood.
We're going to see 3 made-to-order Netflix series about ninjas by next year, and it's going to take all the wrong notes.
Live action Naruto.
There you go. There you go. Let's wrap it up there. And for everybody else, yeah, please give Shōgun a watch on Hulu or Disney Plus, depending on where you are in the world, and let us know what you think of it.